Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter. And I'd like to welcome back to the show our co-host from Michigan. How you doing today, Christy?
I am cold. How are you, Steve?
You're cold?
This is the time of the year that I'm constantly cold. Like yesterday, Dave wanted to go out to dinner, and I had to go into work. It was Sunday, but I still had to go into work. And I came back, and I'm like, I'm not leaving this house again. You are welcome to get whatever you want for dinner, and we can eat it in our house, but I will not be leaving the house. I don't like the cold.
And so we're texting back and forth, and it was kind of cool. Well, actually, it wasn't cool. Marathon weekend that we were down there, but we were like texting back and forth.
Hot.
Yeah, it was hot down there, and all of a sudden, the next thing I know, you've booked another vacation to Florida to get out of that cold.
I just could not help it. I want to go and see the Festival of the Arts. I've never been there for that, and I'm cold. So there you go.
There you go. And
this is what happens.
Well, today, these are like one of my favorite. All the episodes are fun to do, but I love doing these episodes. You know why?
Tell me why.
Why? Because we get to talk to somebody that went on their first Disney cruise, and I love kind of getting people's reactions when they go on their first Disney cruise. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, all the way from the great state of Utah, Brian. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Still cold.
Still cold. Well, I'm guessing it's pretty cold out in Utah right now, too. But as we were talking beforehand, they get some great skiing out there. Are you guys skiers?
I actually am not much of a skier. I go every couple of years, but it's a pretty expensive sport, and our sport is Disney, so
Yes.
don't ski as much.
I totally feel your pain there. We're going to try and ski in February, and we've just resigned ourselves. We just go in one weekend, and that's it, because otherwise it's like just crazy expensive, isn't it?
It is. The people I know who are in it, that's what they do. And they keep their garage full of equipment, and they buy the season passes, and that's cool, but yeah, not for us.
Well, let's turn to everybody, our favorite addiction, I guess, Christy and mine, and everybody else that listens to the show. Let's turn our focus to Disney. Kind of give us a background. You guys are out of Salt Lake. Now, are you guys Walt Disney World fans, Disneyland fans? Give us your Disney background, and then we'll talk about how you picked this cruise.
Yeah, so we are Disneyland fans. I did do Disney World early on when I was single, and we did part of our honeymoon in Disney World, my wife and I, but since then, we've been pretty exclusively Disneyland. We love to go take our kids on. It's not a bad drive to drive down to Disneyland, and we like to do longer trips to Disneyland. So we'll go down there and we'll get a 5-day hopper and stay for a little over a week and have some days in the parks and some days in between that aren't in the parks. And we've done that. We've done a number of epic Disneyland trips we've really enjoyed, and that's kind of been our thing. I guess I can jump into why we did this cruise if you're all right with me jumping there.
Yeah, let's just go with it. How did you guys? What changed your focus from Disneyland, Walt Disney World, and whatnot to finally wanting to go on a Disney cruise?
Yeah, so this summer, it was about July, my wife and I were talking, and she was like, I starting to think about Christmas shopping, and she was like, our kids don't really need any more stuff. Let's do a vacation for Christmas. We had actually surprised our kids with our last Disneyland trip in March. We went to go celebrate Mickey's birthday and only told them like 2 weeks in advance. And we thought, oh, that was fun. Let's do another surprise trip we can tell them about on Christmas morning. But my wife was pretty adamant. She said, I don't want to do another Disneyland trip. It's fun, but we've done that. Let's do something else. Let's do something more exotic. I had always said I never wanted to go on a cruise for very...
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Why? I think that's important because it's going to matter to other people who might not think they want to go on a cruise.
Okay, yeah. So here are the couple things about why I didn't think I wanted to go on a cruise, and we can talk about how wrong I was on some of these. But one of them was I thought being on a boat would be so boring to be hours on a boat. I also thought one of the things I love about international travel is getting to know a little bit about the culture and the people. And I thought, oh, you're not going to get to do that when you're only in port for a few hours. And then the other thing was, to be honest, I had some anxiety about being out in a boat in the middle of the ocean. I think at a very formative age, I grew up in the Seattle area. We went to a big Titanic exhibit when I was in elementary school, and it kind of like scared me off the idea of ever being on a cruise ship. And that kind of lingered with me a little bit. And so I just kind of hadn't really ever wanted to do it. And then I read, I'm a big Disney fan. I read a lot of the blogs, and I had read a blog about somebody who got a job working on Disney Cruise and then started hearing other people's Disney Cruise experiences and started to get kind of interested in possibly trying that out. And so when my wife brought it up, I said, well, what if we did a Disney cruise? We had talked about it a little bit, and she's like, you willing to consider a cruise? And I said, yeah, well, let's look into it. And so we did. One of my things about this was, well, if we're going to cruise, we're going to probably have to fly to Florida. So I kind of did it backwards. I started looking at flights and trying to figure out when can we get to Florida at a decent rate. Now, one of the things that was interesting for my family is we are in a year-round school here. So my kids have breaks throughout the year. They go I think it's 9 weeks on and 3 weeks off throughout the year. So we don't have just the traditional school schedule. And the schedule they're on this year, they have the month of January off, most of the month of January. And so given we were trying to do a Christmas present, I thought, let's find something in early January. The kids won't be in school. That's usually a low peak time to travel. And I found some great flights to Florida and said, oh, well, why don't we do this? And then what cruise would fit, and found a 3-night on the Dream, said, oh, we'll stick our toes in the water. We'll do that. So we said, oh, we'll do this 3-night on the Dream, got it all kind of lined up. And then my wife and I thought, well, we'll combine it with a trip to Universal or Disney World, and just didn't feel right. Christy talked about this in another episode, which she was trying to figure out her Adventures by Disney. Things just didn't feel quite right. We realized, we're big Harry Potter fans, and we thought, we'll go there. But we realized my youngest two weren't tall enough to go on a bunch of the attractions, and trying to do Disney World for just a couple days didn't seem to fit. And so I said, well, let's figure something else out. But we had already bought airline tickets, and I was like, doesn't Disney cruise out of somewhere besides Port Canaveral? And I found this 5-night Marvel Day at Sea cruise out of Miami, and went and Google mapped it and said, I can drive from Orlando to Miami, and the dates worked exactly for us to be able to get there ahead of time safely and make it back for our flight in time. So that's what we decided to do. I called up the travel agent and said, you said this was refundable. Can I switch my deposit and do another cruise? And they helped us work it all out. And so we ended up on this 5-night out of Miami Marvel Day at Sea cruise, and we are so glad we made the change and listened to our gut and went with something that felt better, because it was just the most amazing trip. 3 nights would have been way too short. That was the other thing. I started listening to some of your episodes and realized a 3-night cruise is way too short, and so we were so glad we went with a 5-night for our first experience.
Well, let's first start. How old are your children?
Yeah, so I've got 4 kids. I've got a 12-year-old daughter, a 10-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son.
Huh, so you went back and forth.
Yep, we like patterns.
That's the computer guy in you, right?
Yeah.
So what did you decide? So you guys switched the cruise. So how did it work? You flew into Orlando, and what was basically your plan there?
Yeah, so we decided we'd fly into Orlando. My kids had not been to Orlando before. We thought we could do some Disney Springs, because that doesn't require park tickets. And then the next day we'd do a little bit in the morning and then drive over to Miami and spend a night in Miami. So we were there the night before the cruise. We didn't want to try and drive there the morning of. That ended up working out pretty well. My 10-year-old son we knew was going to have just had a birthday. And so one of the fun things we planned is he's way into dinosaurs. And so we got a reservation at the T-Rex Cafe to eat lunch before we drove to Miami in Disney Springs. And that ended up actually being really fun. So yeah, we had a lot of fun just hanging out in Disney Springs before we went to Miami. Now, one kind of interesting thing that happened, we originally were on a indirect flight to Orlando. We had to fly through Minneapolis. We had enough of a layover. I felt comfortable doing that with 4 kids, but a couple months ahead of time, Delta emailed me that they were changing and we were going to have a pretty tight connection, which got me worried. So I called them up and just kind of explained the circumstances and asked if there were any other options. And they reaccommodated us onto a direct flight that got into Orlando earlier, which was awesome. And that was why I was able to get a reservation that night for Raglan Road after your recommendation. And we loved eating there. That was another highlight of our time in Orlando.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you like it. You always worried, right, Steve? You give a recommendation for something, and then you're like, wait a minute, what if these people don't like it? Yeah, so Delta, I will say, is the easiest. If there is a flight change on their part that will affect you in sometimes even, I think legally it's 90 minutes. If it's 90 minutes, they have to move you if you want to be moved. But I had one that was even a half an hour, and it was after a cruise. They moved the flight up a half an hour, and I was like, I don't know if I can make this. And they easily made the change and put you on another time. And so I feel like they're the easiest. People should watch out for companies like Spirit and Frontier for a couple of reasons. They do not have contracts with other airlines, and Steve could probably speak to this even better, but they don't have contracts with other airlines, so they don't have to put you on another carrier if something they do wrong delays your situation. something like Delta, American, United, they do have the sharing. I don't know what the exact word is, but they can utilize seats on other airplanes. But also, Delta at least is so accommodating. If they moved something in your ticket, they will help you work it out if needed. And for you, it worked out perfectly. You got a direct flight. I love that.
Yeah, we were really, that was a real blessing that worked out for us and got us in earlier. After having gone through it, travel days are hard, especially my kids have, this is only the second time on a plane. So it ended up being really nice to get in a little bit earlier and have that direct flight.
So any tips as far as driving down to Miami for anybody? Anything come as far as going from Orlando to Miami? I know they're going to start a train service, Virgin Trains, believe it or not. It's actually, they're just using the Virgin name, but they are going to have a high-speed train in the next couple of years. But how was it driving down?
I thought it went pretty well. One of the big questions we had is, so we rented a car in Orlando and we just kept it the whole time, ended up leaving it, parking at the port. One of the questions we had is, does it make sense to rent a car and then go turn it in and then wait and after the cruise rent a car again? We decided that was more hassle than it was worth, and there's costs for dropping one-way rentals and whatnot. So we rented a car, drove there, and ended up parking at the port. The drive's on a toll road, so you do have to make sure you know how that works with your rental cars. We were on an Alamo, and they have a toll-by-plate option that we've used elsewhere. I still haven't seen the final bill on it, but it should be fine. Usually, as long as your rental car has an agreement like that as part of it, and you understand how it works, it's not a problem. So we just took the Florida Turnpike the whole way. There's not a lot of places to get off along the way, but they do have like rest areas with gas stations and fast food and stuff. So there were definitely places we could have stopped. Though my kids are pretty good road warriors, we were able to go the whole way without stopping. We put on an audiobook. My kids love to listen to audiobooks on road trips, and so we listened to The Land of Stories. Was our book for this trip, and yeah, they all enjoyed that.
So you guys get down to Miami, you spend the night there. How did you guys get over to the port the next day? We've heard it from a couple different people. It was kind of confusing I know Steve from Tampa driving in there. How did you guys get to the port, and how did that work out for you?
On our way to Miami, we stayed at the Marriott Biscayne Bay, which is right on the kind of right across from the port area on the bay there. And when I went in that night, I think maybe it was a Freudian slip, I accidentally took the tunnel over to the cruise terminal instead of the exit for our hotel. So we explored the cruise terminal at 7 o'clock the night before accidentally, and kind of knew where we were going the next morning. So we drove there. I will say it wasn't hard to get to the cruise terminal. What was confusing is nothing told me where the Disney ship was. It lucked out that it was in Terminal C and we could see it right there. And so I knew where to go, but there were no signs or anything for where we were supposed to go. Just for Disney, it just said Terminal A, B, C, D, and if you didn't know where you were going, that was a problem. But again, it was easy enough to see the magic sitting there, so we figured it out. And I pulled up along the curb, dropped the luggage and my family off, and then went over and parked in the parking garage right across from the terminal, and that was fairly easy.
So how was embarkation in Miami, getting on the ship itself, the first time going through, for you guys?
I thought it was pretty smooth. So we had 2 adjoining staterooms because we had, 4 kids. So 3 of us in each stateroom is how we had to book things. What we ran into, we had a 11 o'clock and an 11:30 port arrival time. And I don't know why they were different, but that's just kind of when we registered what we ended up with. We ended up showing up a little after 11 is when we got there. And my wife told me that when I dropped her off, there was like no lines. But by the time I had parked the car and came down, there was a bit of a line through security. It probably took us about 10 minutes to get through security and maybe 10, 15 minutes to check in with Disney. But then they were just calling our boarding number as we went up there. So it really wasn't bad at all. We took a quick picture and were able to get on the ship.
Did they hold your wife back from going through security, or did she just hold herself back? Or why didn't they just go through?
I think she didn't know if she needed to wait because I had the paperwork in my backpack. So I think that was her. We didn't even talk about it, didn't even think to talk about it. It's just kind of overwhelming your first time not knowing exactly what to do. So I think she just stood aside and figured that might help.
Okay. I think that she could have gone through security. So for the future, or for listeners, you can separate your group and have one person go through security. So you would just need to make sure that they have the paperwork, and they don't even need an original copy because, obviously Disney just looks up your number, looks to see who you are, that you have documentation that says who you are. And that's really the port officials there that do that. And then you guys can reconnect after security.
So you guys get through security and everything else. You guys are finally stepping on the Disney magic. Unfortunately, in Miami, you don't come into the atrium there, just the way the port's set up. What was your kids and your thoughts as you guys got on board the Disney magic?
I think it was a little bit overwhelming to, the ship looks huge if you've never been on a cruise ship before. I know the Magic is smaller, but it definitely looked huge. I actually kind of liked coming on deck 4 because it was cool to see the teak wood deck. That kind of is what I expected, the classic cruise ships. That was kind of cool, but it was very surreal having waited so long for the day to arrive that you get on, you're like, wow, it's just kind of a little bit overwhelming, but cool. Walked in, they call your name. We got in the atrium, and then Ariel was there. So we went and snapped a quick picture with Ariel. And then I went and ran over to check on one dining question I had. Our rotation was Lumiere's, Animators, Rapunzel's, Lumiere's, and I realized Rapunzel's was hitting Pirate Night, and I was kind of confused because I thought we'd have a pirate menu, and I was like, wait, we don't get to go to Rapunzel's for a normal menu, and so I went and checked, and they said, no, we're not doing pirate menu on this cruise. It's a normal night there. It just happens to be same as Pirate Night, so I didn't need to do anything there. I couldn't have imagined that Disney would short us a restaurant, but that was something that I was a little bit paranoid on when I saw our rotation initially. So I did go and ask them. And then we were just kind of overwhelmed. We went and checked out the kids club a little bit. And then my kids decided they wanted to go swimming. And so we had packed in our day bag our swimsuits, and we went up on the top deck and changed into those. And my oldest two ran off and did the aqua dunk without me the first time. And then I got changed. I have to admit, I was feeling a little overwhelmed at this point. Some of the anxiety, just is this going to work out? Is this worth it? I can't believe we're here. Just it's kind of overwhelming your first time getting on a ship. And I went and decided, well, I'm just going to go do the aqua dunk. And I literally left all the cares and worries at the top of the aqua dunk, went down, and I was on vacation. It was awesome. I went and rode it twice in a row, no wait. And that's what got me into the vacation mood. And Reddy was having the floor drop out from under me and going down a water. So
I love that metaphor.
So many
actually.
metaphors.
Yeah, exactly. You and I were on the same page there, Christy. Yeah, the floor dropped out and you were on vacation. So, yeah, that first day really overwhelming. Any tips for people, Christy, as far as that first day goes to kind of take that anxiety down?
I think actually it would be good to hear from Brian what at post first cruise. I mean, it's been a really long time since I've had a post first cruise, but I would say don't have a lot of expectations for how you want your first day to go and let it unfold. And then know that Disney really does think about every little detail. And so they will make it work itself out. Like Disney really thinks things through. They're really, more than any other cruise line, they are really thoughtful in how is this going to go for the family. And so the whole idea of just give it to Disney, know that it'll work out. But do you have any tips, Brian?
I'm glad we had swim stuff packed in our
sure.
day bags, because that's something that's fairly comfortable with, kids are used to that. So that was a good thing to go into. I would say just take a deep breath and do something to get you in the vacation spirit. That definitely helped for me. That was riding the aqua dunk. One thing that caused a little chaos that morning is we knew we wanted to have day bags, but we hadn't really packed that way on the airplane. So we were doing a dash of grabbing things out of people's suitcases and putting those together, because our kids' backpacks were optimized for what they needed on the plane, not what we wanted first day on the cruise ship. But we didn't want to haul our roller bags with us, so we had to do a mad shift. And that was okay, but it made it a little more chaotic that first morning. And then we did not try and do cabanas right away. We ended up just eating pool deck food, the pizza and the burgers. And I mean, that was kind of fun because our kids were kind of thrilled. You mean I can just go up there and ask, and they're not going to ask me to pay? I mean, I can just go get ice cream. And that was kind of a fun way to kick off the cruise. We enjoyed that for sure.
That's a good point, because cabanas can be really overwhelming sometimes, especially if you got all that anxiety and then you head down to cabanas. There's so many people down there. You're trying to find a table sometimes, right away.
And doing it with kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially kids that need assistance still.
I think the sail away party kind of helps put us, that really put us in the mood on our first cruise. Was I felt like once you get the lifeboat drill out of the way and the sail away party started, just the music and all that type of stuff, and the ship gets moving, that really put us in the vacation mood too as well. But I liked all you guys' tips there. Just kind of don't expect too much, go with the flow, and just have fun.
One of the packing tips that I will say that we employ on our trips, if we're doing an overnight stay or if we want to take certain stuff onto the cruise with us, we will pack that way. So either I leave everything we need for the next day when I'm packing, or however many days, if it's 2 days, if we're doing a 2-day stay at a hotel and then we're going to a cruise ship or whatever, at the very top of the luggage. So I'll make sure to lay out all of our clothes and leave those in the room that I'm packing in. And then I'll put them in the suitcase last, and the makeup bags in the suitcase last, and the shoes that we're going to change into. Because if most of the time, if we're flying from Michigan, we're going from cold to warm. So we need to make sure that we are swapping into vacation wear. And then I'll sometimes also just bring a roller bag that can be extra. But like I've talked about this before, it's easier, in my opinion, for me to dress the men in my life this way. So my son and husband each wore their bathing suit and rash guard right onto the ship so that they were ready to go. And then I could change if I wanted to, or just not partake in that part, in that portion, and I can be unpacking or do whatever. So like, especially if you have kids that you could throw their swimsuits on ahead of time, then you don't even have to worry about changing. Just make it easier for you.
Yes, that's not a bad tip. And we weren't quite sure what we were going to want to do, but
sure.
It out that it was great to do the pool deck first thing. Like I said, there's no weight, and we had a lot of fun. We were able to get a couple chairs, and we put our backpacks just backwards on the chairs, so we were able to keep them out of the way and just have a kind of stake out a place and enjoy it until our rooms were ready. So that was really, really fun. One thing I did want to mention for you, first day that was a cause for some concern for me, was the muster drill. Having never done one before, but having some kids who get a little anxiety about fire alarms and those noises and things like that. I will say Disney did a great job. I just mentioned it to our leader, and he said, I'll make sure to tell you when to plug your ears. And then my kids all did that, and then they actually were like, oh, actually this isn't as loud as we thought it would be. It was no big deal for them. So in the end, it was a non-issue, but it was something that we were concerned about up front. So I might mention in case anyone else has concerns. They will make sure you know when to plug your ears if loud noise bug your kids. And our kids at least found not a tonal frequency that bothered them as much as like fire alarms or other things like that. So that was nice.
I think it depends where you are too, when the alarm is going off. So just keep that in mind. It could be different on the next cruise or even in your next muster station.
Gotcha.
So you got the business out of the way. You do the muster drill. What was sort of your rhythm of the cruise? Did you take the kids up to the kids club the first night? Did they go to the kids club at all? Did you guys have kind of this is how we sort of would spend our evenings, for example?
We love to go to the shows. So we had second dining, I would say, which can be a little harder with kids, but we decided to keep my kids on Utah time. So we were traveling to the East Coast, so 2 hours ahead of normal. And my kids are really early risers, and we did not want them getting up at 6 a.m. on the cruise. And so we decided, and we got late dining, and I know we could have tried to change that. We decided we're just going to keep them on Utah time and have them stay up later than usual per the clock, and then hopefully they won't get up early, which ended up working out just great for us. We did the shows every night, and we did dinner. My kids did all enjoy the kids club at one time or another. My 12-year-old loved the tween club, the Edge, and she spent a lot of time off doing that. My 10-year-old did enjoy the clubs, especially at first. Both my 8 and 4 spent some time in them and enjoyed them, but I think they did a little bit less in the clubs than the older two. They were a little happier to just hang out with mom and dad. That first day we did do the sail away party, and then we went and saw the show, which was Twice Charmed, which I think was my favorite show of the cruise. I really liked spins on fairy tales, so that was really fun to watch. And we are a theatrical family. My kids have done children's theater stuff, and we've taken them to see off-Broadway type productions, the Disney shows and stuff like that before. So we all really enjoyed being able to see that on the cruise ship. And it's kind of nice that it was a little shorter than the other ones, but normally when you go to a Broadway, it's a 2 hour, they keep them shorter, which is nice. But my kids are theater goers, so they are used to that, but really enjoy that for sure. As far as rhythm of the cruise, I think it really varied from day to day. That's kind of I kind of gave you my overall take. I can get into some more specifics. Marvel Day at Sea was definitely a interesting day for us. It was so awesome. I loved Marvel Day at Sea, but it was a very intense day. It felt a lot like a day in the parks to me with all the things we tried to do.
So before we get into the Marvel Day at Sea, let's just kind of go, this is a 5-day cruise out of Miami. You leave out of Miami, Day at Sea, Key West, Nassau, Castaway Cay, then back to Miami. And like you said, it featured a Marvel Day at Sea. Let's talk about You talked about the kids clubs. Anything else that you want to touch on with the kids clubs? They can be hit or miss depending upon, your kids' personalities. I'm glad that your older daughter enjoyed the Edge. My older son really has enjoyed time there. But anything else about the kids clubs before we talk about dining and then some of the other things that you guys did on board the ship?
We thought my 12-year-old would spend some time in the kids club, but she's in that in-between age. That was part of why we did this cruise, was so she could be in there. And then she didn't really end up liking that at all. She just loved the tween club, which was great. And one thing that I haven't heard before, and I think this is because I had a daughter and I know you've got a son, Steve, but she got notes written from the counselors that were delivered to our rooms, like throughout the cruise, little fun notes. You know how girls do that. And she actually got a whole swag bag at the end of the cruise that her favorite counselor left her, with like an Edge hat and glasses and a little Disney Cruise Line backpack thing. And it was really cool to see how they tried to create magic for my daughter. That one counselor really went out of her way to make my daughter, have a magical cruise, which I really, really appreciated. That was really cool.
I've noticed that on the Magic, to be completely honest, with the cruises that we've done there. My oldest son they may dwell on that a little bit more with the girls than the boys, but he's definitely gotten notes about, from some of the counselors, and they definitely have given him a swag bag when they've left both times, with sunglasses or all different kinds of things, hats and whatnot, versus the bigger ships. It seems like there's just so many kids. I haven't noticed that as much as on the Magic, I guess. So that's cool to hear that they had that as well for you.
Yeah, and I do wonder, this cruise, it never felt crowded, and I don't know if that's just because we were on the Magic, or if also there may have been a smaller population with less kids, given it was kind of the time of year. I never heard numbers. I know sometimes the cruise director will give numbers and stuff, and I never heard those, but it definitely felt like maybe this wasn't quite as full of a boat, which we were perfectly happy with.
I think the likelihood is it was a combination of both. There probably were less children, and there probably also was just less people in general, and the Magic is smaller in general. We sort of touched upon the fact that you had 2 cabins, but then we forgot to ask you what kind of cabin you had. So what cabin choice did you go with? Inside, ocean view, or veranda?
Yeah, so we went with an ocean view. I did not feel comfortable with the idea of doing inside for fear I'd be claustrophobic or whatever. I don't know. I probably could survive in an inside looking back, but we really liked having the porthole to look out, especially in the mornings. I did not want to do a veranda, both because of cost, but also I was really worried about having a veranda with little kids. I've been told those are hard to, it's not a concern, but my kids are climbers. And so we were more comfortable going with the porthole. We were on deck 2. I think the category is 9B. It was midship, deck 2. We really liked the location, loved our cabins. We felt like we had plenty of room. I was kind of expecting something maybe a little smaller, maybe uncomfortable, but I actually felt, compared to some other hotel rooms we've been in, that we were better able to organize our stuff. I didn't feel as crowded and cramped, and we loved the split bathrooms were actually really nice for our big family. So props to Disney. They did such a good job of helping me feel totally comfortable. We've been in camper trailers and things like that, and I was kind of expecting one of those feels, and it was not like that. It felt, like we had plenty of space. So.
Did you guys have adjoining rooms? Were you able to
yes.
have okay. Did I miss that? Did you say that already? I'm sorry.
He did.
Yeah,
okay.
But yes, and that was key. I didn't push the issue because we had adjoining rooms and we just kept the doors open because, each of our key cards, I think, was only coded to open one room. And so it was kind of nice that they were adjoining so we could go back and forth between. I always had to go in one door and my wife always went in the other door. I don't know for sure if we didn't have adjoining rooms, if you can actually get your key card coded to open more than one door. I didn't ask.
No, but they'll give you an extra key.
Ah, gotcha.
So, and even with adjoining rooms, you could still have asked for an additional key.
Gotcha. Yeah, it wasn't necessary, though, and we didn't have any noise issues or anything else. We really loved that deck 2 location. Was kind of nice. It wasn't too far from anything. A little bit of a haul up to deck 9. We tried to encourage the kids to take the stairs instead of the elevators, as did we, to keep our calorie burn high. We liked the location a lot. I will say one thing we worried a little bit about first-time cruisers was, is anybody going to get seasick? We actually did have, I think, a little bit rougher than normal seas our first 3 days of the cruise. It was kind of windy and the boat was moving quite a bit. I kind of got the impression it was a little bit abnormal. And I wore C-bands because the first night when we got in the theater in the front of the ship, I started to feel a little bit. I put on some C-bands, but that was all it took for me. We didn't have any real issues with seasickness, which was really, really nice.
That's great. Do you usually have motion sickness?
My kids and my wife can all do the crazy roller coasters and don't tend to. I do get motion sick. I have to be careful. I can do some level of roller coaster, but I can't do inversions. And so I was not sure how it was going to go. But again, some C-bands, and I think I chewed garlic or ginger gum once, and that was all it took to keep me happy. My wife has gotten quite land sick coming back from the cruise. She kept feeling like on the boat, and that's been hard for her. But but she wants to go on another cruise. So
is she still feeling it?
She got a cold a little bit, and we think the sicknesses probably made it take a little longer to go away. She was still feeling a little bit yesterday, but I think it's better today.
So my tip for that is to take Dramamine. I'll take the less, or Bomine, the less drowsy formula is what I would take, but I take it for 2 days after a cruise. And I give it to my son, too, because he seems to have similar issues. So January, especially early January, but January in general can be really dicey weather-wise. I think that's also why you felt so much motion at the beginning of the cruise. How did your weather end up?
Our weather was awesome. We had 70-degree weather, which coming from Utah was just glorious. There was some wind. We did get a little scattered rain shower on Castaway Cay, but overall, I felt like the weather was just great. The water temperatures were, for somebody who's used to really cold Southern California oceans, I felt the water temperatures were actually quite nice. I mean, they felt cool, but you got used to it really quickly, and you could swim for hours without feeling cold like I do in Southern California oceans. So, yeah, we really like the weather, but I do know it can be a little dicey, but it worked out really well for us. I think if we had been from like Florida or maybe a warmer climate, we may have felt differently. But coming from 20 to 30 degree weather in Utah, it was wonderful.
Well, let's turn to dining then. You kind of touched on it a little bit. You were worried about Pirate Night, going to Rapunzel's. What were you guys' overall thoughts? First time being on a cruise ship once again, going through the rotational dining. What did you think of the dining rooms, and what was your experience like?
We loved rotational dining. We loved our servers. Our servers were awesome. We had Steve from Jamaica, and we had, I'm going to probably butcher his name, I think it was Visanu. He just had us call him Visa from Thailand, and they were phenomenal. They read our family really well, and as Steve put it, he was the Usain Bolt of the dining room. We had an efficient service. He could tell that my kids did not want really long, drawn out dinners or anything. And so we were pretty in and out, never felt rushed. It wasn't like he was rushing us. It was just like, I know some people talk about doing puzzles and magic tricks and stuff. And I saw him do some of that with the other tables. With ours, it was all just about getting the kids fed and on our way, but doing it in a way that we didn't feel rushed at all. But I could tell we were getting serviced faster than some of his other tables that maybe wanted a more leisurely dinner, which was perfect for us and our kids being second dining. And it was just awesome. My 10-year-old loved being able to order off the adult menu, and he tried seafood and got steak every night. My 12-year-old also ordered off the adult menu. My younger two just did the kids stuff. My 4-year-old, every night he's like, I think tonight I'm going to try the mac and cheese. Night after night. But, it was wonderful. We really, really enjoyed the dining. I didn't think I was going to like Lumiere's, but we were there 3 times. And I like the actual rotational menu there quite a bit. And the theming there was subtle but cool. We did love Animator's Palette a lot. I think that was my kid's favorite. Rapunzel's was definitely cool. We enjoyed the interaction with the thugs. We were a little tired that night. I think we want to go back when we're maybe not a night quite so tired. But we had some phenomenal interactions. We asked, by the way, if you ask the thugs about their dreams, they will go on and on. It was quite cool. We asked Vladimir about his dream, and after he had already interacted with us for a minute, he took another 5 minutes telling us about his dream. It was quite cool.
I'm with you. I love Lumiere's. I love the ambiance in there, and I think that's.
I
know. Well, they have escargot there too, but I'm like. Gotta work it in every podcast, but I think the thugs are amazing. I know they have 2 different shows, so you didn't get to see both of them. Have they changed it up? I guess one of the shows is kind of like it's the birthday party, and then one show they just have the thugs going around. Which one was it for you? Just the thugs going around?
It was the birthday party and the thugs going around. Okay. So I don't know if it's kind of a combined show. The thugs were there. The musicians were there. Rapunzel and Flynn were there. They were celebrating her birthday. They did the lantern parade. So I think it's kind of a combined show when they only have one night there.
Okay.
Well, that's good that they did it that way.
Yeah, I think the thugs are amazing. That made our cruise when we were on the Magic last time too. So as you kind of profess, you guys are a theater family. You talked about the first one, Twice Charmed. What were your thoughts about the rest of the shows?
I think my daughter liked Dreams the best, which actually I have to wonder if they updated the Dream show. because I hadn't heard anyone else talk about some of the special effects in there. It was kind of a montage show. Let's pick Disney music and have a rough storyline to put all these songs together in. But like they had a Frozen segment where it snowed in the theater, and they had an awesome Olaf. It was kind of like a puppet, and they had Josh Gad's audio recording with it. So that Frozen scene was awesome. They had a Lion King scene where they did projection mapping of animals in the savannah. And I was just super blown away with how cool some of those scenes were from a special effects perspective on a cruise ship. So we really enjoyed the Dream Show. And then, of course, the headliner is the Rapunzel show, which I actually think I liked the least, maybe because I already knew the story. It was well done, very, very well done. The performers were great. I loved how they did the horse, Maximus. I thought the way he was done was phenomenal. So I can't say that it wasn't. It was awesome. It was just I kind of liked shows that I didn't know the plot line a little bit more.
Anything else about the shows then, Brian?
We didn't get there super, super early to get seats, and we were still able to get decent seats every night. That was kind of nice. I think it may have been because it wasn't as crowded of a cruise, and also we had the second dining, so our showing was the early show, and there was maybe a little less competition. My 4-year-old did fall asleep a fair amount in the theater, but that was fine. We were really glad we went to all the three main shows. We did not make the variety show. Oh, maybe you want me to talk about Marvel Day at Sea, but there is a special show the night of the Marvel Day at Sea that's worth talking about.
Let's just switch it around to Marvel Day at Sea anyways, and we can kind of go through there. Were you guys able to look ahead to see what some of the experiences might be on board for Marvel Day at Sea? I know you can go over to Scott's, the Disney Cruise Line blog. He's got a lot of information on there where you can look at past navigators. Did you guys do any research any information beforehand, or was it once you got on the ship that you kind of came up with your plan for the day?
I definitely looked at past navigators from Scott's blog quite a bit. And then we also were able to pre-book 2 ticketed meet and greets. They're free, but they're ticketed meet and greets specific to Marvel. There's a Groot one, and then there's a Heroes of New York, which gives you Iron Man, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and is there one more? I think that it was just those 3. So we did book. We got up right at, it was 10 p.m. Our time, but midnight when our booking window opened. Of course, we were first-time cruisers, so have the last option for that. But got on, and I'm really glad a lot of people had early morning meet and greet times. Somehow we managed to pull a 2:30 Groot and a 3 o'clock Heroes of New York. So we had them back to back, and they were in the afternoon, which was awesome because it gave us something to do in the afternoon, but didn't mean we had to get up early and start our day with that. There were a lot of things I wanted to do, and there's so much to do on Marvel Day at Sea. We didn't get to do everything. My wife had got those picture frame mats to be signed. One thing to be aware of is the Disney characters like Mickey and Donald will not sign on the same surface as the Marvel characters. They have to be on different things. And so we got 2 picture frames and taped them back to back. So one side was for Marvel and one side was for Disney. So we had one thing to carry around and we can just flip it over based on who we were seeing. But my wife really wanted to get all the Marvel signatures. And so a big part of our day at Marvel was there's lots of character meet and greets. The lines are not atrocious, but there certainly are lines. For the ticketed ones are really fast. But if you want to do like Thor and Captain America and Captain Marvel, all of those, we had to wait in lines. And so that did take a decent chunk of our day trying to get all those signatures. But one really cool thing is when my son really didn't want to do that, we just sent him to the kids club, and the rest of us went and got the pictures and the signatures and didn't have to deal with, like you would at a park, maybe a kid unhappy waiting in line. It was nice that we could have the kids club as an option. So Marvel Day at Sea, yeah, that was a big part of it, was the meet and greets and pictures. There's also spontaneous ones. We spontaneously ran into Doctor Strange and got a picture with him. The one challenge with the spontaneous ones, I ran into Hawkeye and Black Widow and stood there a line for them, and I stood in line to go get a picture with them, but they don't have a greeter with them. And so they're not making sure that everyone in the line is going to get to go. When they're ready to go, they just leave. And if you're in line, like I was like 3 away and they had to walk off. And so it's one thing to be aware of on the spontaneous ones. You don't really know. Whereas the more formal line ones where there was a greeter, they made sure you knew, hey, yeah, you're in the line. You're going to get to see them. Oh, no, you're too late. You're going to be in the line for the next person coming to this position.
So with Star Wars Day at Sea, obviously, the Star Wars music is kind of iconic. Did they change the music up as well on the ship on Marvel Day at Sea?
They did, and that was really cool first thing in the morning to go out there and hear that Marvel music going. They do. It was really cool.
Okay, and then you talked about the show too. Let's touch on that a little bit quick.
Yeah, so there's a couple shows, and this is something these shows, if you're not a huge Marvel fan, like we watch the movies, we know them. I wouldn't call us Marvel super fans. But one thing, if you end up on a Marvel Day at Sea cruise and you're not a Marvel fan, some of the stuff is just really cool, and you don't necessarily have to know the characters and everything to enjoy it. So the Doctor Strange does a show, and it's similar to the Jedi Training Academy in that they have audience participation for the kids. So two of my kids, we didn't all arrive at the same time, and two of my kids got there earlier and got to participate in the show. Doctor Strange takes them up and teaches them a little bit about how to do magic, sorcery things. They get to summon a portal and do some fun little things. But what I liked about that show more than like the Star Wars Jedi Academy, if you've ever seen that at the parks, is the show had a lot of cool special effects and an interesting plot line aside from the kid part, which was fun for the kids to interact. There was actually a story and some pretty cool special effects, and that was fun to see. And they actually did that show like 3 times. So they had it earlier in the afternoon. The latest showing was actually 6:15 versus the normal where there's like an 8:15 for the normal days. That one, all of them were earlier, which was kind of nice. It was a little bit shorter show. I think it was about 30, 40 minutes.
So if somebody wanted to do that show, they would just get there and stand in line at the determined time, and then they would pick people in line, or how did that work?
I think my wife just went into the theater and they made an announcement that any kids who wanted to, they had 12 spots and you could go down there. I was not actually there to observe it, but that's kind of what my wife described, as they had just gotten there a little bit earlier and they were asking people in the audience, kids in the audience, if they wanted to participate. So. And
then did you guys end up getting the pre-purchased photo package ahead of time?
We did, and we loved that. That was really cool. I do have a little tip there, though. You are supposed to pick up your USB drive the morning that you disembark. I went and checked in with them the night before, and they said, no, you come back in the morning, and I totally forgot.
Oh, no.
And I hit me a half an hour outside of Miami. It hit me, and I was so freaked out. And we were pulling up, my wife was pulling up on the phone, like the customer support, so we could call and ask. And I called them up and like just absolutely frantic. And they were like, oh, calm down. You know what? We actually have them available. Submit a support case and we can actually email them to you. And so we did that. I submitted a support case, and I think it maybe took 48 hours, and they sent me a link, and we were able to download all the photos. So if you forget the USB or lose it, there is hope. Yeah, it freaked me out, but it all worked out fine. We got all the pictures, and we loved it. We had like almost 200 pictures. I think the Marvel Day at Sea helped with that, and it was so worth it for us, just because we loved having all these fun pictures, and we didn't have to. They will totally take your pictures with your camera at all the character meet and greets, so we didn't have to, but it's kind of nice just not to worry about it.
Well, and the quality is better. And I don't know, I'm assuming Disney doesn't do this on purpose, but some of the light in some of those picture locations are really bad for non-professional cameras. And so when they're taking the picture, they can control that light a little bit better, and it really helps the quality of the picture.
It does. 2 other things I should talk about on Marvel Day. 3 things, actually. So one is there was also a show, a USO style show. It was kind of a, if you know the story of Captain America, it was 1940s themed, kind of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, that style of music themed show that was really, really good. And you didn't really have to know anything about Marvel to enjoy it, but that we had the tie-in was the Captain America 1940s World War II theming was the story tie-in. But it was just a really cool musical performance that was at like 5:30, and I can't remember if it was in Fathoms or the D Lounge, but it was really cool. The other highlight of Marvel Day at Sea is their deck show is phenomenal. If you've seen like Fantasmic at the parks, it's better than that. And it was very different than any other deck shows we went to, because we did Marvel Day at Sea our second day in. I was a little disappointed with some of the other deck shows they had after seeing this, but it is phenomenal. Our server made sure we got out of dinner on time to get up there, and he gave us the best place to watch it, which was if you're facing the screen, it was the left-hand side up on deck 10, because they have action on the screen, they have action on the stage, they have people action on both funnels, and then they have fireworks. And not wanting to give away the plot, but it's a whole interactive superhero thing. Hydra's taken over the boat, and the Avengers have to defend the boat, and it's really, really cool.
You're the second person who's talked about that. And Chrissy, you were going to have to go on a Marvel Day at Sea, aren't we?
I guess.
Because I think by far that show gets the best ratings from everybody that we've talked to about it.
I feel like maybe you and Chris need to do a podcast show that goes there, and I can just pick a different one.
You can live vicariously with us. Go ahead, Brian. I cut you off.
I was going to say, I think Christy would enjoy it, but it is late. It was at like 10:15 at night.
She's long gone to bed.
I did have to carry my 4-year-old through the whole show, and we did have our kids up there, like saving a good spot because everyone knew it was cool. We got up there in time and had an awesome spot, but I know not everybody can have the awesome spot. So it was worth. I'm really glad our server really pushed us. He's like, we're going to do a quick dinner, and you're going to get up there, and here's where you're going to go, and it's so awesome. Worth it. And it was awesome.
Well, it sounds like you guys had a great day, Marvel Day at Sea. I do have to give you guys props, Brian. You guys had one of the best pirate pictures I think I've seen as far as your family being dressed up. It was amazing.
Yes, when we found out about Pirate Night, this is months in advance, and I didn't mention this. This was a Christmas present. It was a surprise. My kids did not know about this cruise until Christmas morning, and that was like 2 weeks out. But I went to the kind of Comic-Con type event here in Salt Lake in search of a pirate costume and tracked down a bunch of costume pieces. And my wife ordered the pirate red dress from the Disney store online when it was on special, and then we collected pirate costumes for my kids. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed dressing up as pirates. We did do the Pirate League, which is kind of like the Bippity Boppity Boutique, but they do pirate makeovers on Pirate Day. And that was something we had to reserve in advance. And we had them kind of spread out because we had 4 kids and all of them. We wanted to have a reservation for all of them. And then we figured we could cancel if once they knew about the cruise, they didn't want to. Of course, they all did. But over time, we were able to move the appointment times to get better appointment times. So that's one tip is as we got closer and closer, sometimes opened up and we shuffled them around. And then when we got there and got on board, we still had like a 3:30 and a 4 and then like a 6:15. And when we got on board, we went right up there and they were able to move our 6:15 closer to our others. So that all worked out. But we enjoyed that. It was, I think, like $49 for the basic package, which is what we did. And we felt like it was worth it. The kids had a good time. They get a bunch of swag. They got like a sword and a hook and a pretty cool pirate treasure. And so they get stuff with it, as well as my boys got a makeup on their faces that looked really cool in the pictures. And they did a little hair makeup thing with my girls. And I don't know that we would do it again, but it was definitely worth doing once, especially if you want to get cool Pirate Night photos.
Well, I'll definitely make sure we get those photos in the Facebook post when this episode comes out. And I know you already posted it once before, so people may have already seen it, but just that was amazing. You guys definitely outdid yourselves. That was awesome. Well, let's turn to the ports, and we don't have enough time to kind of go blow by blow through each of them, but why don't you give us a highlight in each one of the ports, starting with Key West?
Key West was awesome because it's the U.S. You can feel totally comfortable just getting off the boat and doing your own thing. One thing to be aware of, in Key West, there's 2 places that they dock, and we ended up docking at the there's actually a naval base there that they let cruise ships dock at, which is kind of a unique situation because you're docking in a secured area, and they have a little train shuttle that you have to ride that takes you and drops you off over in kind of the downtown area where the other cruise port pier is. And they're very strict. You have to get off the boat, get right on that, and you cannot take any pictures of the boat or they will confiscate your cameras. They were very, very clear about that. So even though there's really cool photoshops of the boat, don't do it until you're outside the base is what they told us. But that ended up being pretty slick. We got on the tram, and it was kind of nice that they gave us kind of a tour, and you can pay to go on that conch train is what it's called in Key West. And we basically got a mini version of it for free as they took us from the dock out to the main downtown area and dropped us off. And then we had to ride the same thing back. So that's kind of a unique thing about Key West. It depends on your cruise, whether you dock at that or the main dock downtown. But for us, we got the military pier. We just did Key West on our own. We walked around, saw some shops, and we went to the aquarium. The aquarium is really cool. It's smaller than most aquariums I've been to, but very interactive. My kids got to feed sharks. They have a really cool touch tank. So I felt like it was priced like most aquariums, about $20 per person or something. It's a little expensive, but we felt the interactivity made it worth it, even though it was a little smaller than some aquariums. And then we went back to the boat. We got some key lime pie. Got to do that in Key West. They have good key lime pie. And we went back to the boat early and enjoyed the pool deck the rest of the afternoon.
Christy, have you ever been to Key West?
I have been to Key West several times.
I've never been there. That's one of those places we'd like to go and check off one of these days. So maybe a cruise, who knows?
It's super fun. One thought for people, especially if they're going on a Disney cruise where the kids clubs will keep your kids during a port day, and or if you're going with grandparents. I love the idea of the aquarium, so I wrote that down because we will be going to Key West in a month when we go on the Edge again. But I like the idea. I think I'm going to take Blake to the aquarium, and then we'll drop him back off on the ship with my mom. And Dave and I like to walk around. So there's an artist that's a Disney artist, Disney like licensed. James Coleman has a storefront. I forget what those things are called, but places where you could buy his art. So he's got a gallery. There you go. He has a gallery. So we will walk there. Just the walking and the bars. You can go to the southernmost point in the United States, so which you could go to with kids. But so it might be fun to do a little both. I think that's what I'm going to do on my next day there.
Well, let's turn to NASA. What did you guys have planned there?
So NASA was one where we were pretty sure we didn't want to just get off the boat and explore on our own. So we booked a Disney shore excursion. We went over to Blue Lagoon Island and did their dolphin encounter, and we loved it. It was an awesome experience. It does have some of the cons of a Disney shore excursion. It took a little while to get off the boat, get organized. And the one thing to be aware of, the boat ride over to Blue Lagoon Island was much longer than I thought it would be. Wasn't a huge thing, but we didn't have a ton of time. We got into Nassau a little late. It was scheduled. We didn't get there till 10 per the schedule. And so by the time we got to the island, we did our dolphin encounter, and they let you play on the beach. We didn't have a lot of beach time before we wanted to catch a boat back. Because it was pirate night and we had those Pirate League appointments scheduled. As one little feedback, we did cut that a little too close. We thought we'd be able to get back from the shore excursion because they listed it as like a 4-hour excursion. And so we thought we'd be back sooner than we ended up being. And we kind of had to run right onto the boat to get people showered and up to the Pirate League thing. But we were so glad we did the dolphin encounter. My kids loved it. One thing to be aware of, the two groups ahead of us had families ahead of us, had kids who got scared and wouldn't go in the water with the animals, which I felt really, really bad for them. Having paid all that money, it's a little bit of a more expensive shore excursion. So know your kids. We didn't even think about that. Fortunately, my kids loved it. They thought it was so cool. So we didn't have a problem there, but just something to be aware of, know your kids in that sort of circumstance and how they might do. They had us in kind of because we had my 4-year-old with us, we couldn't do the swim. So we were the encounter, which they have you kind of standing on a platform. It was up to his chest, my waist in the water. And then you get to dance with the vault dolphin, get a hug and a kiss from the dolphin and touch them. It was really, really cool. But it's a little different than the swim encounter because we had my 4-year-old with us.
Yeah, good point there. My youngest son was terrified when we went swimming with the stingrays and down in Grand Cayman at first. So yeah, definitely that's a good point there. Kind of know your kids and think about that ahead of time as far as doing something with a big animal like that. So from Nassau, you're off to where, Christy?
My favorite, Castaway Cay.
Take it away.
So what was your experience on Castaway Cay? Did you guys do I think you did the 5K, right?
We did the 5K. And actually, I should mention, I forgot to mention this. One of my favorite things I did, I started Marvel Day at Sea. I kind of wish we had another sea day so I didn't have to do it the same day. But I ran a 5K on Deck 4, just on my own, a training one on our sea day. And that was really, really cool to run at sea on a ship. And there was a little bit of motion, and we got some sea spray as I came around one of the sides on most laps, which was really, really cool. So I'll put a plug there since the 5K training for my wife and I are not runners. And the Castaway Cay 5K got us to do Couch to 5K and got us into running. So I know we kind of have a Run Disney thing on the podcast. And so I will say it motivated us. We loved it. And then I also did a training 5K on the boat on Sea Day, which was really cool. So we loved the Castaway Cay 5K. Both my older kids ran it as well. They did not train as hard, but my 10-year-old was happy. He beat mom. And my 12-year-old just walked the whole thing, and she was fine with that. We really enjoyed that. It was brutal because all our training had been in the cold, and it was hot and humid. Made it a lot more difficult than I anticipated, but we did it, and we made it, and we got the medals.
Yeah,
so congratulations.
That run, I think it's the heat, and maybe it's like day 5.
It's the humidity, man.
Yeah, they just like it's a 5K, but sometimes it feels like a marathon. I tell you what. So good on you guys for doing it. What did you guys have planned for the rest of the day in Castaway Cay then?
We just really wanted to enjoy the beach. We brought our own snorkel gear. Now, one thing we had done, my kids didn't know about this, like I mentioned, but my wife and I had some snorkel gear, and it was on sale at Costco during the summer. We bought some and had them practice snorkeling in the neighborhood pool in case we ever went on a vacation where they might want it. Nice. And they did. They practiced snorkeling in the pool and had fun. And then we had that gear that they were comfortable with. We kind of looked at the rental prices versus luggage fees. We brought a lot of luggage, by the way, and decided that for our family, the extra bag with Delta was cheaper than renting a bunch of snorkel gear. Plus, then the kids would be comfortable with it. So we brought that. We did snorkel. I will say,
Did
Castaway
the
Cay.
4-year-old?
Go
Did
ahead.
your 4-year-old snorkel?
No, my 4-year-old did not snorkel. So we dropped my 8 and 4-year-old off at Scuttle's Cove when we did the 5K, and then I picked them up after. And then my wife and I went out individually. So I took the older 3 out snorkeling because we didn't really want to put the 4-year-old back in the kids club alone. And my wife just played with him on the beach while we snorkeled, and they went shopping and got lunch and stuff.
Can I ask you a quick question really quick? The kids club, while you guys were doing the 5K, did they talk about what they did in there, the littles? Like, how was that? I don't think we've had anybody really talk about that.
Yeah, they were playing in the sand. There was a little splash thing there, but they told me they didn't do it. They were happy and fine, but I didn't really get I don't know what they actually did, to be totally honest. Other than they told me they didn't play in the splash area. When I walked in to pick them up, it looked like they were just playing in the sand, which they were probably perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, and then you didn't have to play in the sand at that moment, so even everybody wins.
I think they do a lot of games. When my youngest went in there, I think the first time we went to Castaway Cay, he was in there for a couple hours. They did a lot of interactive games with the kids too, trying to get them to play like Capture the Flag and some other things like that. So I know they do that in Scuttle's Cove. Anything else then for Castaway Cay, Brian?
Yeah, so we did do Pelican Plunge. That was fun. Enjoyed that, and that was nice. There wasn't a huge wait. That was one thing that impressed me. I thought we were going to have a hard time getting a spot on Castaway Cay, but we didn't. We went and put our stuff down before the 5K on the one beach by Pelican Plunge. And then this is one tip. Once we were done with the 5K, we realized that wasn't really where we wanted to be, that we wanted to be over by the snorkeling beach because it was less crowded, and if my kids just wanted to play in the water or snorkel, that was better to be, and we were able to move over and find a spot over there without a problem. The snorkeling was a little bit of a ways out. I will say that my kids got really tired and kind of turned towards the end a little bit negative because it was just so far out for them to swim to see anything. I had to drag them back. So that's one thing to be aware of if you decide to snorkel with kids. But they just played in the water and had a great time. We loved the food. We kind of shut down Castaway Cay. I was trying to miss the boat and be stranded on the island, but I wasn't successful. Yeah.
You and Tom Hanks would be out there, huh?
Yeah. I asked them if it was possible to be left, and they said no.
No. Especially not there because they run everybody's key card and
they're going to find
not
you.
let you hide. Yep.
I was going to say, but it was phenomenal, every bit as magical as we had hoped. Yes. And my wife has made it very clear that any future cruises must stop at Castaway Cay. That's now a must do.
Well, you guys end up, as all things do, they kind of come to an end. How was debarkation back at Miami, and did you guys head back up to Orlando? How did that work?
Yeah, so debarkation was sad, but we went. We did go to our breakfast, and I'm really glad we did. It was actually, I was a little disappointed with the breakfast food in Cabanas, to be totally honest. But that last day, I liked the farewell breakfast we had, and we really liked saying goodbye to our servers. So we did that, and then we got off. Like I said, we had a lot of luggage. We had a porter who helped us all the way through customs. There was a line, but it wasn't bad. We were off the ship by, I think, about 9:30, and we had the later breakfast time. The porter took us all the way to the parking garage to our car. We had like a 4:45 flight, so we had to drive straight back to Orlando, and that was fine. The drive was uneventful, and it was shorter than coming. We didn't hit any traffic. So had no trouble hitting that and having plenty of time at the airport. Airport lines were a little bit bad in Orlando. I think we saw a lot of people with Marathon Weekend shirts on. I think a lot of the Marathon Weekenders were leaving then, so it was a little busy, but no problems. And wouldn't hesitate to drive back from Miami to Orlando to catch a flight the same day we got off the cruise again. It really wasn't a problem. I suppose if the boat had come in late, it could have been, but I didn't feel like it was stressful or anything.
So looking back now, do you have any tips? This was your first cruise. Do you have any tips for other first-time cruisers?
I think one thing is we acknowledged we really pushed to get all those character signatures on Marvel Day at Sea, and that kind of made that a little bit more of a stressful, busy day. We now are really looking forward to having a sea day that's not busy, because one of the great things about cruising, for somebody who's used to the parks and go, we always pace ourselves at the parks and put like a break day in between and stuff like that. And we realized you can push yourself really hard on a cruise, but part of the cruise is just sitting back and relaxing and enjoying. Mm-hmm. So make sure you find time to do that. I think if we ask my kids the favorite part of their cruise, I did ask them that. ice cream was mentioned as the unlimited ice cream. So you see what the kids enjoy. We did take some moments. My wife got up early one morning to catch the sunrise. I stayed out late a couple nights. My wife's an early to bed person, kind of like Christy, and I went out after and got some pictures of just being on deck at night with the moon, stuff like that. We had some full moons. That was incredible. Just the standing on the boat. We went out together as we left Castaway Cay, I think it was, just as a family and watched the scenery go by. And I think we played a little ping pong too. Those moments were just incredible. That was the thing I didn't realize, is just how magical just being on the ocean is. It really is. And you could do that on any cruise line. You don't have to be on Disney Cruise Line to enjoy the magical moments in the ocean. But there definitely is a lot of Magic Disney ads. So we're going to be sticking with Disney, don't get me wrong. But that was one thing that I realized, is there's a magic to cruising, and then there's a magic to cruising with Disney. And they're both awesome. In terms of tips, we probably did pack too much, but you know what? It all worked out. I don't have anything else that comes right to mind for first-time cruisers. Just enjoy it, and it will be it can be as magical and as fun as you imagine.
And so you caught the bug, right? Did you book a placeholder?
We did. I asked my wife, I said, should we do a placeholder? And we're like, yep, absolutely. We did a placeholder, and then we didn't know when we might try and convert that to a real thing. But we got back, and I hadn't even been back a week, and I made the mistake of looking at itineraries, and we have our next cruise booked. We're going to do a Very Merry Time out of Miami again this December, actually. So we're going to have 2 cruises in a year, which it's right at the very end of the year, but we're going to do 2 cruises in a year. I'm kind of shocked.
Yes.
But, yeah, we're way excited. We're doing another 5-night. I'd love to do longer, but for having to get 2 staterooms in our budget, 5-night felt like it's long enough to really enjoy, but the price point is a little bit more in line with what we can do. And we found a really good deal on a Very Merry Time. So we're going to go do it. We've got it booked. I actually, really excited.
And just so you know, Brian, you don't have to go on the Dream or the Fantasy or even the Wish until Cruise 6, because that's what we did. So.
I mean, that is a way, not the right way. Kidding.
Well, my wife had a little bit of a gauntlet. She's like, I want to stick on a smaller ship. I want at least 5 nights. I want to go to Castaway Cay, and I don't want to go to a port we've already been to. So we looked at sailing out of Galveston, because she's from Houston, and there are some good itineraries there, but just we got a really good price point. I don't know why this cruise just came up as so much less, but it did. And so we're going to it's out of Miami. We're going to hit Grand Cayman, 2 sea days. We've decided we love sea days, and then Castaway Cay. And so we're really excited about the itinerary as well.
No, that's perfect. And those are some of the places where you can find, I mean, Disney cruises obviously tend to be expensive, but those are some of the places where you can find some value. I think sometimes, like out of Miami, Galveston. Chrissy, you guys are sailing out of New Orleans here soon as well. I'm not sure how the prices compare down there. And I love the fact that your kids go year round. I wish our kids did that, to be completely honest. Not so.
I don't know how daycare works with that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess just having more choices during the year, where you might be able to pop away for that break, where you're not stuck with the summer where everybody's cruising and the prices just go astronomical. So that's kind of a cool ability for you guys, Brian.
It is. Unfortunately, it's going away. Despite my campaigning, the school board is trying to get rid of our school board rep, who I don't not like, is trying to get rid of it. So we have it next year. And the cool thing is, because we booked the cruise now, we're adjusting what schedule we sign up for next year. So we'll be off for my 3 younger kids when we go next year. My oldest is now in middle school, and they don't do it in middle school, so she'll have to miss some school. But that's the way it goes.
Well, I guess as we finish up, is there anything else that we've missed that you wanted to touch on before we finish up today?
No, I just really appreciate the podcast. I appreciate everybody who's come on before me, because I listened to pretty much every episode, and that really got me excited, helped me to overcome some of my worries, and just make a great cruise. Yeah, so thank you everybody else who has come on. There's a great community that Christy and Steve, you guys have built. So appreciate all of your efforts for that.
Christy, any final thoughts?
No, just that I'm really happy that you enjoyed it. I'm really happy that it worked out and that you caught the cruise bug. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you for those words, Brian. And I was kind of worried because I know you reached out to us early and we're so excited about going on your first cruise. And I was like a little nervous. I was like, oh man, I hope it meets his expectations. And I'm so glad it did for you guys and your family. And when you guys get back from that, if we don't talk to you before now and then, but when you guys get back from your your cruise out of Miami at Christmas time of the Very Merry, we'd love to have you come back on and talk about it as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, thanks again. Have a great day, and we will be chatting with you soon. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I'd really like to thank Brian for coming on and sharing his and his family's experiences as they sailed for the first time with Disney Cruise Line on the beautiful Disney Magic out of Miami, featuring that Marvel Day at Sea. And if you would like to come on and share your family's experiences, you can reach out to me, Steve, at dclpodcast.com. Once again, that's Steve at dclpodcast.com, and we'll get you set up and scheduled to share your family's experiences either with Disney Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, or even Run Disney. We love doing those Run Disney shows as well. And if you would like to connect with Christy and Chris and I, you can do so over at Facebook via our Facebook page, facebook.com/DCL Podcast. You can also reach us on Instagram, instagram.com/DCL_podcast. We love interacting with all of our listeners out there. If you'd like to become a supporter of our show, you can do so through our Patreon program. Go ahead and check out patreon.com/DCL Podcast and find out all the information there as well. Well, between now and our next show, if you are heading out on your next vacation and spring break is coming up fast, I can't believe it's March. If you guys are heading out on that next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on that next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.